Hello and welcome to Guitar Chat.
Okay, here we go with the whole tone scale on the guitar. You can play the notes. Every other note represents a whole tone scale. There's only two whole tone scales, and this is one of them. And the way it lies on the guitar, being that you have a major third in between the third and second string, all the rest of the intervals from string to string is a perfect fourth. And as a result, you have a deviation of this pattern as it approaches this third and second string. And then from second to first again, you're back to the correct interval. And so you have a little deviation in the pattern. But basically this is one of the whole tone scales. Now the other whole tone scale would fit completely adjacent to this. Next to it, you'd start out here and then go every other note. That's the whole tone scale. So as you can see, you've only got two whole tone scales. If I were to go through and put notes in those places, it would just completely cover up the fingerboard. So you can see you have two whole tone scales. This is one of them. You can play it on one string going up or down, or you can play it any form or fashion you want, or you can play parts of it going this way. These are called tritones, and these are augmented fourths right here. Since you see that the guitar is tuned in fourths, if I go from G to C right here, this would be a perfect fourth. I raise that interval there, becomes an augmented fourth, or it can be called a flat five. Your five would be here. You flatten it, there's your flat five. So this is called a tritone, this augmented fourth. And as you can see, there's a lot of tritones in this scale, and the augmented fourths. Also, you have going this way, you have major thirds. Major third from here to here to here to here. This is a major third right here, and this is a major third. So, as I mentioned, in between the third and second string, you have a major third, as opposed to a perfect fourth. But in any event, this is your augmented chord here, this B, D sharp, G, and then you're repeating yourself here, B, D sharp, G. This chord repeats itself if you jump up to this spot right here. As you'll see, it's just a different inversion of the same thing. You got B, D sharp, G in the soprano, B in the bass. Up here you got D sharp in the bass and B in the soprano, so it's just a different inversion. This augmented chord is the rest of the whole tone scale. These are part of that tonality. This is a literal inversion of this, and then this is a continuation of what is in the whole tone scale. So as you can see, if you play these three notes and you just move up every other string, you have what you could call a chordal or a augmented chord that's moving in a whole tone position. So any of these notes represent that whole tone setup, and you can play these. For instance, you can play A, D sharp, C sharp, G, F, B, etc. The tritone parts of the scale going in major thirds, or you can play the tritones themselves, go tritone G, B, C sharp, F, G, B, C sharp, F, etc. G, B, go in that direction. So this can be played in a myriad of ways that you can play this particular scale. But basically, this is the whole tone scale. The other whole tone scale is exactly this pattern moved up a half step. So now if I move on here to make this guy work, I have something else I need to look at. Oh, here it is. And it is not showing it to me. Okay, here we go. This is basically what I did is take and created a diminished seventh arpeggio. If you look here, and you can disregard these numbers on here because a diminished seventh, any of these could be the root, any of these notes, any of these could be the other constituents. This program I used decided to call that a sixth. But nonetheless, the pattern is a minor third. So we'd go from here, a minor third. Go from there, a minor third, which is that, up to here. Go from here, a minor third. From here, a minor third. Here, minor third. Here, a minor third. That's a minor third there. Up a minor third, another minor third. In other words, a diminished seventh is nothing more than minor thirds. And it is symmetric. So if you look at this pattern right here, you'll see this pattern reproduced right here. This exact same 5 notes is this 5 notes right here. You can see it's literally reproduced every 1, 2, 3, 4 frets. Diminished, any diminished pattern reproduces itself every 4 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Same pattern exactly. Same 5 notes again, same 5 notes again. Same relationship here, down here, etc. This is one of the diminished seventh chords. Now there's 3 diminished seventh chords derived out of the 2 whole tone scales. Now I put in here in these squares one of the whole tone scales. If you started here, boom, 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 boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's one of the whole tone scales. Then I moved up a half step to create the other whole tone scales in whole steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So that's both whole tone scales right there. The one in the polygon and the one in the square. So basically to show you that this particular one of 3 diminished seventh chords has this tritone in it from the first whole tone scale, and then this diminished seventh chord also has this tritone from the other whole tone scale, showing you that this diminished seventh chord has constituents from both scales. And that's basically the point, is that these elements, this tritone is from one of the whole tone scales, and this tritone in the same diminished chord is from the other whole tone scale. Now the same thing exists for the other 2 diminished seventh chords. So what that means is that I could take this same pattern and move it up here or there, whatever. Ultimately, there's 2 more of these patterns. I take this pattern, move it up, also move it down. I'll fill up every single hole, every single fret on the fretboard. That will be all the diminished seventh chords. Every one of them has the same relationship in terms of having 2 tritones from each of the whole tone scale. So that's basically what I wanted to show here, how that relationship is. And also, while I'm thinking about it, the this whole tone, the whole tone scale right here. If I put the other whole tone scale in it, as you can see, if I were to include this whole tone scale, the next step of it, you would see I've got and this one here. You would see it is chromatic. Everything is chromatic. Every single note that's on there. So basically, that's also significant. There's only 12 tones. 12 tones. That's the chromatics. You divide it in 2, every other one. You end up with 2 whole tone scales. From those whole tone scales, you can derive 3 diminished seventh chords. And from those 3 diminished seventh chords, you can derive anything else from that. And I'm going to approach that topic on the next run through. But basically, this is the gist of that business, the relationship between chromatics to the whole tone to the derivation of the diminished seventh chord.
Okay, here's an example of the whole tone scale. There's two whole tone scales. 12 notes in the musical scale period. 12 chromatic notes. Divide them by 2 every other note. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, every other note. Now if you go in between those notes, you've got the other whole tone scale. Now those can, obviously, you can go vertically, also across the neck. And because remember that between the third and the second string, you got a different interval there, so your pattern changes. But if you go for the whole tone scale, it's pretty basic as it was in the chart there. Every other note, but then you skip one forward to go to the next string, skip one forward to go to the next string, skip one forward to go to the next string. But then in between the third and the second string, you don't skip one forward, you go straight down. And then from the second to the first, you skip one forward. So if I just do that part of the pattern, which is a series of major thirds, really is what it is. I go here, backwards, or descending. Now, you add this whole note above it, and there's your whole tone scale moving this direction. And then there's all kinds of variations of that distance, as you can see on the chart. So you can work out your own fingering for the, and you can do arpeggios of the augmented chord, which if you just play 3 notes in succession of that pattern I just showed you, it's right here, it's augmented. You're playing 3 notes at the same time. If you keep that up all the way across the neck, then you have that part of the whole tone scale. And then knowing that it's a whole step up to the next 3, then you have all these augmented chords. You can move the chords horizontally and then do arpeggiations on them. So that is the augmented whole tone scale. Whole tone scale is both really the augmented chord and the 2 whole tone scales. Now out of these 2 whole tone scales, as it was in the example there, you can derive, there's 3 diminished chords, period, in all the notes that are available. So the diminished chord is basically a series of minor thirds. If you stay on these bottom 4 strings here, this right here, minor third, and then you move up, minor third on the next 2 strings, move up, minor third on the next 2 strings, move up, minor third on the next 2 strings. Here you are on the second and third string, so you got a different position. And then move up. Here. continue this, you're you have to go all the way down there. Okay, those are the arpeggiated notes for diminished. And the popular positions or inversions slash positions. This is one of them here. You can look those up. These exist across tritones, which is an the augmented fourth, which you could see in the pattern. Augmented fourth is going down and then going up. So you start here and then move up and down, move up and down, move up and down. Now we got that weird interval again, so we're going to have to move an extra step up, which is here and then here. Okay, these are what's called tritones, or an augmented fourth. And these, since there's only 3, they repeat themselves every literal 4 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So any of the positions that you play for a diminished 7th chord, diminished 7th chord is 4-tone chord. It's nothing but minor thirds. It repeats itself every 4 frets. And you can move this way through the different positions. This one, and this one. This way. For all those diminished patterns. Now, I'm going to play a diminished chord here and record it with my looper here. So I think I'll just play this right here. Another inversion, same chord. And then back down to where I started. All the same chord. So now that's playing. Now we're going to see what the whole tone scale sounds like on top of that diminished 7th chord, because we know that that diminished 7th chord is derived from both whole tone scales. So you can use either whole tone scale against that diminished 7th chord. So let's hear what it sounds like. I'll just pick this one here. Of course, you'll find it being more consonant, more harmonically consonant when you're playing the notes that are in the chord, the 2 that are in that particular diminished 7th chord. Now I'm going to do the other whole tone scale. see that the both those whole tone scales work against that diminished chord. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to play the whole tone scale, and then I'll lay over the top of it the 3 different diminished chords, so you can see that they still blend together. So I'm going to take a whole tone scale. Let's do something here, semi-rhythmical. There's that. Now I'm going to play one of the diminished 7th. There's only 3. One here, and one there. And then it'll be repeating itself again. So here's one. And that's just one inversion of it. If I repeat it, I repeat that one, repeat it, same chord, just different inversion. I'm using the move 4 frets rule. Okay, now I'm going to keep that same whole tone scale, and now I'm going to move it up and play a different diminished. And that one will also fit with it. Different inversions, but still same diminished chord. Okay, now I'm going to play the other diminished 7th chord against the same scale. See that they all fit. Now, because of the I believe the gravity of holding one diminished 7 chord, the gravity of its tonality, if you will, it when you stay in the one mode, it sounds more consonant. And if I mix those 3 up, it will become more dissonant. Nevertheless, the 3 will still go against it, and so let's give that a whirl. Back to our standard whole tone scale. See, those all go, and that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to give you an example of where you take your diminished. You can derive 5 different dominant chords out of it by just moving any tone of the diminished chord a half step down. So if I start with the 5th string here, I'm playing here. Let me Okay, here's a D diminished seventh. I move this note here, which is a D on the 5th string, 5th fret. I lower it, it becomes a C sharp, dominant 7. Go back to the diminished. I lower the ring finger 1 step. It becomes the root of the new dominant chord. In this case, it's a G, G7. Go back to the diminished. Now lower this string here, the index, lower it down 1, and that is an A sharp, dominant 7th. Go back to my diminished, and I lower the pinky this time down to here. So now that's an E note. So that's an E dominant 7. Used to hearing it there. Other positions for it, etc. But now this business repeats itself. You go up 4 frets to repeat the diminished. You drop that note, and you have one of those chords again. Drop the other note. You have one of those chords again. Drop the other note. You have one of those chords again, etc. So now with that, you've got 4 different dominant 7 reharmonizations or substitutions for any particular dominant or a diminished 7 that you're using.